Hey everyone, and welcome back. So today we're going to be reviewing LIL GATOR game on the Nintendo Switch. Now technically, this game is a 3D action platformer, but we'll be getting into that in the review. It released on December 14th of 2022, and it currently sells on the Nintendo Switch eShop for $19.99. The game is published by Platonic Friends, and it has a download size of only 252 megabytes. Now, just before we jump into the review, I do want to let you know I did a full playthrough of the game on stream just a couple of weeks ago, and I'll be using footage from that stream for today's review. So if ever you see me in the bottom right corner and my lips aren't syncing up, that's why. But now with that out of the way, let's jump into what makes this game quite a special experience. And remember, if you are liking the content, hit that like button. Now if we begin with the storyline. Contrary to most 3D action platformers, LIL GATOR game actually has quite a developed storyline, and it's actually the centerpiece of the whole game. I would even go as so far as to say that this is almost like a visual novel disguising itself as a 3D action platformer. You're playing as a LIL GATOR character that you'll get to name as you wish at the beginning of the adventure, and he is super excited because he's receiving the visit of his older sister who's back home for college for a certain amount of time. And the reason for all this excitement that as younger kids, they used to play together, creating grand imaginary adventures where the big sister would make up the scenarios. However, to his disappointment, his sister is still wrapped up in her adult work and doesn't really have time for what he calls playtime. Now to correct this, LIL GATOR tries to set out and create the biggest imaginary playground possible, to create an irresistible experience and pull his sister back into playtime. And that's where your adventure kicks off. Now the main attraction of this game, I would say, isn't even the action platforming itself. It's the incredibly funny and diverse dialogue between all the characters. It really brings you back to a simpler time where everything was a game. And it really even tries to teach you some life lessons along the way, like you can't change who you are to please your friends. And that is the main strength of the game. It creates an incredible overall vibe that really makes you feel like you're back to being a kid. And don't worry, there won't be any spoilers here, but there's also a huge emotional payoff and message to be delivered at the end of the game. Now, however, on the flip side, I do want to also mention that although this dialogue is the main strength of the game, it's also somewhat of a weakness at the same time. Because although some of the dialogue is very appreciated and very witty, there is a lot of it. And some of the writing is slightly long-winded and could have definitely been toned down. And if you're not in for a huge deal of reading, you're really never gonna get into the full vibe that this game is trying to offer. Reason why I said earlier, this is almost like a visual novel disguised as a 3D action platformer. However, overall, I've gotta say that the positives definitely outweigh the negatives, and it was an overall great experience when I played through the game, especially after stream when I dove back in and I really took the time to read the dialogues properly. Now if we move on to gameplay and controls. Now the game plays out as a 3D action platformer where you have to make your way around the island, completing quests for different characters to recover them as friends at the playground. However, to complete the main storyline, it is basically broken up into 3 major quest lines to recover one of your initial 3 friends that you had at the beginning of the game. Each of these 3 friends are now with a new group of characters, and you'll have to complete a series of quests to have those friends come back to the main playground. You'll also have to find a few hidden friends along the way in each section of the island, and each time you have recovered 10 friends, you'll complete 1 chapter of the game. Once you've successfully completed a chapter, it develops a portion of the playground. Upon successful completion of all 3 chapters, you have the option to access the endgame chapter. Now, a straight playthrough of the game while reading very quickly through the dialogue can probably be completed in about 3 hours. However, if you want to experience everything the game has to offer and recover also the optional friends, you can extend that playtime by probably an extra 2 to 3 hours. Now, this game controls as your standard 3D action platformer, with only really 2 action buttons to control. You have a jump button and you have an attack button. You do at certain occasion obtain some special items that can be activated with a third action, but these are very few and far between. And most of these special items only have a single use scenario for some of these subquests. Now the overall control feeling here is that of a floaty control design. However, it is very voluntary here and it fits in with the overall gameplay. This was never meant to be a 3D precision platformer, and that floatiness allows a lot of flexibility. Also, this is a game that you never have to worry about dying. You actually don't have any hit points, and there's nothing that can actually kill you. And although you have an attack action, all the enemies are cardboard cutouts, and these are only collectathon items that will allow you to craft either new hats as a cosmetic feature, or some of the special items that I referred to earlier for some side quests. As I mentioned earlier, this game was definitely not centered around the gameplay, but rather centered around the dialogue and the overall incredible feeling of being a kid that it creates. The gameplay, however, is nonetheless satisfying, and overall, you'll still enjoy your time jumping around this world and discovering new areas. However, I do have two major gripes with the gameplay. Number one, the camera. Unfortunately, the weakest part of the overall gameplay here is the control behind the camera, which sometimes will get stuck in walls or just not follow you along quickly enough, requiring you to manually adjust it on a regular basis. It's not that this is unusual for a game like this, it's that at certain times you actually feel like you're fighting with that camera. And my second gripe with this game is the fact that they did not include a map, or even a mini-map to help you get around the environments. Now luckily, the environment is just large enough to make your experience enjoyable, however, not large enough where you'll necessarily get lost for long periods of time. However, the absence of a map does mean that there will be maybe a few occasions where you'll be going around in circles, not sure if you've already adventured through certain areas. And it will require a great deal of visual recognition to make your way around the island. And especially if you decide to do these side quests and find all the extra friends, the absence of a map will be your biggest challenge. Now if we move on to the graphics and sound. Now visually, although simple, I find LIL GATOR game has a very distinct look to it. Now at its base, it has a very simple 3D polygonal based look to it. And I would say it's slightly reminiscent of something from the late PS1 era to early PS2 era. However, what really adds to its flair is the fact that it's almost like a cel-shaded look on top of those polygons that make it really feel almost like a Saturday morning cartoon. And although this isn't offering a graphical powerhouse, it nonetheless fits in with the overall theme the game is going for. Where however I was somewhat disappointed and this really didn't work as well is in the environment, which in some parts just looks too similar from one area to another. And combined with the fact that there was no map, this became slightly frustrating at times. But overall, I still think in the end the visuals were successful in delivering what the developer was aiming for. On the sound side, you have a very pleasant atmospheric soundtrack to the game, and it really works overall, not becoming repetitive or annoying at any part of my gameplay, while at the same time definitely not taking the forefront. So not a game where you'll be humming the music after it's done, but at the same time one that was definitely enhanced by a beautiful yet simple soundtrack. So now we're at the verdict. And if this is one of the first time watching one of my videos, my full review scale is available down below in the description of the video. Now actually figuring out a score for this game was actually quite a challenge, because it offers a quite unique experience that not every gamer is going to appreciate in the same way. However, in this case, I did finally settle on an 8, putting this game at the low end of a great game. Overall, this game knew what type of experience it wanted to deliver, and it went at it full tilt. And oddly enough, it's probably one of those games that will be best experienced by an older gaming audience who will really have that nostalgia about being a kid. This is really a game that is not about any one of its individual elements, but rather the overall vibe it creates. And in my opinion, the biggest issue some people will have with this game is unfortunately its sales price, Because at $20 for a 3 to 5 hour experience, some people will be finding that on the high side. However, that will probably make it a great candidate to pick up once it hits a few eShop sales. So now I want to hear from all of you. Are you going to be picking up LIL GATOR game? If you've already played it, do you agree with the review? Let me know in the comments down below. And remember, on the way out, if you did like the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already, and click on that notification bell so you know when all my future videos come out. As usual, I hope I'll see you in my next video.